What is going on, guys? It is lividfray. Hope you guys are all doing very well today. For today's video, I wanted to focus on the D3-FNC gear set. This one has taken me quite a bit of time to work on because I'm constantly learning new things about it. So I'm finally at a position where I think that I can give you guys the most accurate information, but I just wanted to apologize that it's taken me this long. But I do think that it's going to be really informational for a lot of players who are wanting to put together a defense gear set. So we're going to go through all of the bonuses from the 2 pieces to the 6-piece classified bonuses, and I'll go over some of the best ways to utilize the build as well as actually make the build. So without further delay, I'll go ahead and get right into the gear set bonuses. Just a quick disclaimer, we're not going to be talking about any guns or talents or anything just yet. I'm going to go over just the bonuses first, and then I'll start slowly getting into like some other ways to make the gear set better. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to start off with the 2-piece bonus. So the 2-piece bonus is really straightforward. It just gives you 15% protection from elites. This is a no-brainer. It's a really good piece to be throwing on. It could work really well with ninja bike builds. I have used defense on a ninja bike build with Final Measure before because they just pair really well together. You can ideally make it work for pretty much any kind of build that you're utilizing for a PvE build. So 2 pieces, you know, works very well against elites and named enemies, so would definitely recommend that. The 3 pieces is going to give you 10% ballistic shield damage resilience. Now, ballistic shield damage resilience in the game, this also applies for the performance mods that give you the 5% max ballistic shield damage resilience. It's important to note that this applies to your agent as well. It does not only apply to the shield, so 10% is a really big number for this. It obviously helps make the gear set that much stronger. I do recommend throwing on damage resilience mods with this gear set, but we're going to get into that in a little while. So, very straightforward bonus there. The 4-piece is going to unlock the frontline talent, which allows the usage of an SMG as long as one is equipped while the shield is deployed. It's also very straightforward. When I first saw this, I thought it was like one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. What's important to note with this set that we haven't really, at least a lot of myself and veteran players didn't really consider, is that it does not matter which mod of the shield you have equipped. And I'll quickly get into the skills just to show you guys what I mean by that. So your shield has 3 different modifications from reactive targeting, assault shield, and kinetic breaker. Each of these provide their own bonuses. The reactive targeting basically has a stronger and lighter shield that pulses targets. The assault shield grants you increased weapon damage, knockback, accuracy, and reload speed. And the kinetic breaker basically just heals a very small portion of the damage that is incoming as healing. All of these are actually disabled when the 4-piece defense is activated. And then only the master mod is activated, which is the self-healing armor mod. After a short time without taking any damage, the shield slowly repairs itself to full health. Now, this one kind of blew my mind because as I was making the build video, I kind of read the description to myself as I was making it, and I was like, wait a minute, is that actually true? Because when I've built D3, I've always used the assault shield, thinking that it gave me increased accuracy and weapon damage and things like that. I did eventually go out and test all of these, and it's actually exactly what it says. None of these shields actually provide you any benefit. None of them have increased HP with this build. As you can see, I'm cycling through them. All of the numbers are exactly the same, including the base shield. Does not matter which one you use. Unfortunately, it kind of eliminates the whole purpose of the build. However, defense by itself is still really, really strong no matter what. I do think that it should have let us choose which mod that we actually want though. But anyway, I just wanted to make that extremely clear that when you do equip the 4-piece, you will lose the ability for the shield mods and only the master rank is activated. Ballistic shield health is also increased by 57% for every 3,000 stamina. Now, one thing that I did gather from other veteran players and even non-veteran players alike is that defense can be built in a number of different ways. You can lean it towards any kind of stat or attribute that you want to. But one thing that we collectively pretty much all agree on is that the defense build should always utilize 9,000 stamina. Because this 57% is way too big of a chunk to be missing. Even if you go to a 6k stamina, it's just not recommended. I would always go towards a tank build if you can. You're just going to provide way too much benefit to your team. I do not think that the 4-piece is very strong, but I do recommend that you play with it when you're first leveling up and when you first get the 4 pieces, even if it's not classified. I recommend that you play with it just to learn the gear set and learn the mechanics and really just enjoy it for what it is, because when you're roaming around open world or doing like challenging mission content, the 4-piece is fine, realistically. You're going to be able to get through just fine with that, but I really wouldn't recommend bringing this into legendaries, into the dark zone. I just wouldn't recommend it for that kind of content. It's just not strong enough. But the 4-piece, I still recommend. You can also try using this in underground. It might get chunked away during challenging underground, but either way, I still recommend that you play with it and just get a feel for it, see how the mechanics are, and then eventually when you get the full 6-piece set, you'll have a lot more fun with it. But before we get into the 6-piece, let's go over the 5-piece. This gives you 15% additional protection from elites for a total of 30%. So that's incredible. I do believe this also applies to your shield as well, so your shield takes 15, rather in total 30% additional protection from elites, and you'll also receive 5% more ballistic shield damage resilience. So altogether with the 5 and the 1 and 2, or excuse me, the 2 and 3-piece bonuses, you're receiving 30% protection from elites and 15% ballistic shield damage resilience. Again, keeping in mind that this attribute also applies to your agent. Now we're moving on to the 6-piece bonus, which is the improved frontline talent. When the ballistic shield is deployed, melee damage is increased by 2000%. This is absolutely how it sounds. It's very good. All overhealing the player receives is also applied to the ballistic shield as healing. So a couple of things that work really well with this are the support station. When the support station is destroyed manually, that chunk of HP that comes after also applies to the shield. I also believe all of the healing skills will apply to the shield. I'm not 100% sure if things like the defib apply to that, but things like the overdose obviously apply to that. Another one that is highly recommended is Combat Medic. Even if you are solo, Combat Medic is technically considered another ally, so it's going to heal your shield for 40% of that heal. And as well as any other teammates that hit a med kit near you, that's going to apply to your shield as well. So Combat Medic is an absolute must-have for this build. Would definitely recommend having that. After reaching a damage threshold from receiving physical or exotic damage, the ballistic shield grants a buff to the player and all group members within 15 meters for 6 seconds. Really quickly, I just want to touch on what exotic damage is. I've talked about this a little bit on the channel, but not very much. Exotic damage is essentially anything that's not a bullet. So it applies heavily towards status effects, but it also helps with explosions, and in some cases it helps, I believe it also helps with the APC in Falcon's Lost, and it also helps with the turret in Clear Sky, I believe. I might need to double check that, but I do believe that helps with that. So that's what exotic damage is. So whenever you receive physical or exotic damage, you're going to grant a buff to yourself and all group members within a close proximity. The duration of the buff is increased by 2 seconds for every 3000 stamina that the player has. This is another big reason why 9k is just highly recommended. You're going to increase that buff by 6 seconds total with 9k. When you receive physical damage, meaning bullets or whatever else, armor is increased by 30% for yourself and all group members. When you receive exotic damage from explosions or status effects, the weapon damage for your party is going to be increased by 30% as well. I don't know for sure if these stack onto each other, like if you get them in close succession, if both of them will activate. I'm not 100% sure. This buff is definitely nice to have, but I do think that the final measure buff is a little bit more consistent. It kind of depends on the content that you're playing though. And finally, another really good reason to be running 9k. When you are at 9000 stamina, the ballistic shield health is increased by 200%. This is just a no-brainer. I would not be running classified 6-piece with anything less than 9000 stamina. It's just way too many bonuses that you're missing out on for not doing it. Even if you're wanting to go more towards DPS, you could always roll everything towards crit instead if you're wanting to, and then also use the ballistic shield damage mods instead of damage resistance. If you're wanting to go more towards damage, I would not lose out on this 9000 stamina bonus. So quickly before we get into the attributes, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the skills and the talents here in the abilities section. So for the skills, obviously, like we mentioned earlier, it does not matter which shield that you run, you're always going to have the master mod. So really you can use any of these. I do believe that they all have different appearances, so you could choose whichever one that you like the appearance for the best. I can't remember, there was a veteran member who mentioned that they use a specific shield because it looks like it covers more of your body. It probably doesn't do anything. I don't know exactly which shield it was. It might have been the reactive targeting. I'm not exactly sure, but one of them looked like it had a bigger cover radius and it looks better to them. So that's the one that they used. For the skills, again, you can use pretty much anything that you think will be beneficial towards you. You can use a support station. The life support is a good option. I like to use the defibrillator because I can either heal myself passively. I do like to have that consistent passive healing on this build, so I can either use the defib for myself, or I can use it on teammates that are down and legendaries. That's like the primary use for this. Another like S tier skill that you can use is the Flashbang Sticky Bomb mod. This one, it's also a no-brainer. Keeping the enemy stationary for your damage dealers is a really high priority. You can also use a pulse if you want to, but ideally someone else on your team will be running a pulse that's much better than yours. But if you don't have someone, you could always use this. It'll help your SMG do more crits. That's pretty much all I would recommend there. Your signature skills you can rotate based off of your preference or whichever the party needs the most. For the talents, I like to run, of course, Combat Medic. Combat Medic, again, is just a no-brainer. Critical Save is a really good option here because pretty much any kind of damage resistance talent here is going to also benefit your shield. So whenever you use a mech hit, not only will it also receive the Combat Medic heal, but it'll also take 20% damage resistance for 10 seconds. If you are running a shield build with lower skill power, you can run Death by Proxy if you want to. If you're in legendary missions, you can destroy some, whatever skill. It could be a station or a turret or a Seeker Mine or whatever. Doing that will give you 20% more skill power, which may help you reach that soft cap a lot quicker. On the move is honestly a must-have for this build. I wouldn't run this build without it. You're just gonna constantly have that incoming damage resistance. One is None is also, in my opinion, a must-have for this build. It's just going to help you save a lot on ammo, especially if you don't have ammo capacity rolls on your chest piece and backpack. Precision is also a really good talent. It pairs very well with One is None. You'll always have that crit unlock, so you don't always have to run a pulse. For example, if someone on your team doesn't have one, and if you don't feel like running one, you can just run Precision, and then you'll always have a base pulse activated. I think that's the only other one. Besides Adrenaline, Adrenaline is also an honorable mention here, so you'll have that status effect immunity for 7 seconds. It can help in those legendary missions in most cases. Battle Buddy can also help you if you're running the defib. Again, Battle Buddy should also apply to your shield. I haven't actually tested this one, but it sounds like it's something that would actually just work naturally, so I would definitely try out Battle Buddy if you haven't done so already. Now that we've talked about the skills, talents, abilities, all that, we're going to head right into the weapons. So obviously you're going to be using SMGs. Some really good talents to go for are Destructive. Destructive is pretty much a must-have. I don't have it on this build, but I'm currently looking for another SMG that I can utilize. The one that I am using as my primary has Hurried and Predatory. Predatory is just going to give me that passive healing that I really need to stay alive for my team. And you obviously have a really high health pool, so it's going to give you more health back over that 20-second period. But yeah, as far as the talents goes for the SMGs, Hurried, Deadly, Destructive, Predatory, these are all really good to utilize. You can also use Determined on the bottom slot, Ferocious on the bottom slot, whatever you feel like using. We talked about the guns a little bit. Let's go into the gear. Now, one thing that I did learn after speaking a lot with veteran members of the community is that defense can really be built in any way that you want it to. I've noticed that there's a lot of players that really enjoy running skill haste versions, so they'll roll skill haste on all of these slots, on the chest piece, the holster, the gloves. They'll use all skill haste mods instead of running damage to elites or skill power. One thing that I will mention about the attribute rolls is that you'll want to make sure that you're reaching at least, I think it's anywhere between 123 to 125,000. This is kind of the soft cap. This is like the amount that you should be going for until you shouldn't put too much into it anymore, because it's going to diminish over time. It will still do something, but it's going to be so minimal that you might as well just focus on something else, such as these damage to elite mods that are going to give you 4%, and when you stack those up, you're going to get even more. Since mine are not over 200 something, like I think you need at least 2 10s in order to reach a good number with all of them. As you can see, I'm just barely meeting the 3832 requirement for some of these gun talents. So you need to have enough firearms to surpass this if you're wanting to use all damage to elite firearm mods, as well as I would be missing out on one stamina piece. I'm using 1 stamina, as you can see, to get to 9k. I have found that if you just keep skill power on the mask, backpack, and knee pads, you will meet 125,000. So if you want to just be safe and do that, that's what I would recommend. But if you want to do something else, and you can do skill power mods instead, and instead of these damage to elite or critical hit chance or whatever you want to do, It really is going to depend on how you want to make the build. You can successfully pull off a 9k stamina, almost 4k firearms defense with multiple different methods. So you just have to find the one that works best for you. For example, if you're running this for a PvP build, I would almost always recommend crit, but you can do skill haste as well. If you're going to run crit, you'll want to make sure to have, you could do critical hit chance on the mods, and you would have to do skill power on everything else. Really, the actual roles are going to be the way that you want to make the build. Now that we've talked about everything that there is to talk about D3, the last thing that we have to cover is the actual responsibility of a D3 player and the actual strategy for using the build. So your actual responsibility for a D3-FNC build is mainly to take damage. You are to take as much damage as you possibly can so your teammates don't take any. With this build, you have been given the tools to tank a lot of damage from multiple different targets, and that is going to be your primary objective with a build like this. The more damage that you take, the less your teammates will take, therefore the more damage they can put out if they are a predator, striker build, any kind of DPS build really. As well as the healer. The healer's responsibility is to heal their damage outputters, and your responsibility is to tank that damage from the other side of the room. So the best method for using this build is really to get right up in the enemy's face. Go directly up to their spawn points, try to keep them there, keep their attention onto you so the damage dealers can do what they do best. Tactician builds that use BFBs are actually also considered damage dealers. They are completely glass cannons. They depend on their skills to do their damage, and in most cases their skills can provide more benefit than an actual DPS dealer. It just depends on the situation, but the less damage that they take, the more bonuses that they keep active, such as inventive, and the more they can just keep outputting damage as much as they possibly can. An additional goal that you're going to have is to try and get the NPCs' backs towards your teammates and have them facing you towards the other side. In doing this, you're just going to ensure that you're not going to be tanking any of your teammates' damage, you're not going to be body blocking any of their shots. This is just going to be the optimal way to be playing this build. Now this can be really tricky in a lot of the different missions, but in most cases, you should be able to pull this off no problem, just by constantly facing them, try to maneuver them so their backs are facing your teammates and they are instead facing you. Now, there are going to be instances where they are going to continuously melee your shield. This can be very annoying, but this is kind of what you're there for. You don't have to put out as much damage output as you want. You can actually make it so you have no damage and you're just an absolute pure tank. That's also a very beneficial way to make a build like this. But if you are wanting to try and output some damage and build it the way I have, where you have some damage to elites and enemy armor, this is great as well, because the damage that you do put out is going to be very beneficial. You'll actually be able to chip down on the armor and the health of elites very easily. But going pure tank in missions is definitely beneficial as well. This is very helpful in missions like Clear Sky, where you really just need to keep all of the NPCs' attention on you as much as possible. Now, when it comes to the actual aggro, the shield is supposed to have increased threat, but the actual attention for the AI in this game is really finicky. It doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. Even if you have loud vent breaks, that seems to actually work maybe like 20% of the time. They just seem to target very specific people, and it's almost always who they actually see first. And there is theories amongst some veteran players that they do tend to focus whoever has the strongest pulse in the group. So if you do have a healer on your team, like a reclaimer, and they do have a really strong pulse, they do tend to aggro them more often in our experience. Another member of the group that they tend to aggro more than others are anybody that has a flashbang. So if you have a flashbang equipped, we've tend to notice that you are going to pull the aggro more often. This is not a confirmation that that's actually true. That's just based off of our experience. We've noticed that flashbangs do tend to grab the enemy's attention faster than other skills. So you yourself as a D3 player, I would recommend using a flashbang. In most cases for this footage, I had a defib on, especially if you notice that people aren't going down very often, or if there's a reclaimer on the team, you could definitely take this off for a flashbang instead. I do quickly want to return back to when I mentioned you're going to get a lot of melee attacks with this build. Especially in legendary missions, the NPCs are really aggressive. They will, if you're within a close proximity, they will just run up to you and smack you. Your shield, of course, is going to tank this damage, but the reason why I'm mentioning this again is that it will one-tap teammates that are nearby you. And by nearby, I mean it's a really close proximity. But there's a lot of instances where if you are body blocking a lot of the teammates a lot of the teammates' hits, they will try to get around you to hit the NPCs. This is why I'm emphasizing that you try and get behind the enemies and then face them the other way rather than getting in front of all your teammates. You will notice that there were a few instances where I was in front of my teammates. This is definitely not the best idea. You should try and get behind the enemies as much as you possibly can, because in these instances where they are pushing you to slap you down, if there are teammates next to you, they will also get smacked down, and that's just not the best idea. Try and get behind the NPCs as much as possible, and then in the instances where you are constantly being meleeed, this is where the hurried weapon talent really comes in handy. You're going to be able to reload your SMG really quickly before the next melee attack happens, as long as you have landed quite a few crits to actually lower that reload speed. Another general tip that I have is to make sure you guys actually take advantage of the additional melee hit damage. 2000% extra melee damage actually is a lot. You would be very surprised at how you can actually kill enemies with melee. This does hurt quite a bit in PvP, depending on the other build that the other player is using. And then if in legendaries the NPC that's in front of you is, all their armor is gone, you can actually chip away at their health pretty easily. I would definitely recommend using the melee hit damage. It does help in a lot of different scenarios. One of the last tips that I have is in actually regards to PvP. If you notice that the enemy team has a defense player, one of the best things that you could do is use a sticky bomb. For some reason, the stickies that the NPCs shoot are not as strong. I don't know if that just comes from the protection from elites or if it comes from something different compared to the PvP BFBs. But the PvP BFB sticky bombs are way stronger, and they will actually destroy the shield. So if there is a player on the enemy team using D3, one of the things that, probably the best thing that you could actually do for the teammates is to throw on a sticky bomb, because you will instantly destroy the shield. I have done it quite a bit recently in Last Stand. It does still work. I wasn't sure if it still worked anymore, but it does work very well. So if you are having trouble with a D3 user on the enemy team, you could always throw on a BFB, and that will either completely destroy or almost destroy their shield. Aside from the other tips that I've already mentioned in the video earlier on, I think that's pretty much all I have. I'm sure that I've missed some items here and there though, so make sure if you guys are really experienced with D3-FNC that you guys leave your comments down below for other players who are wanting to make the build and try it out for themselves. I'm highly encouraging all veteran players to chime in with their knowledge so we can pass that down to all of the newer players that join the game and want to play with D3-FNC. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.